What are the 5 best beginner chess openings? Now, that's a question that bothers a lot of players, and one of the reasons is because it's a fairly challenging query. You don't know exactly how to think about that or how to answer it. So my suggestion to you is this. When it comes down to choosing an opening, the best way for you to decide on how to do that is to, number one, really figure out what do you really wish to do. It's like, basically the simplest idea is this. Rule number one, how do I make sure that my pieces are well advanced and well situated so I can attack? And rule number two, basically, being how do I make sure that everything's well? So it's a very interesting concept that I notice not a lot of chess players are fairly well aware of. So let me try to shed some light on how you can do it. We're going to talk about both tactical and positional openings, beginning with a little more tactical kinds of openings, actually. So, what is the first thing that we would like to do? Starting with a little bit more tactical, you would always want to go, of course, with e4. That makes most sense, and it is definitely the kind of line that would always want to pick if we're fighting for something more than just a quiet position. Now, with that in mind, of course, black could do, maybe c5 and, something like that. But, usually we have to expect that he will do the Sicilian. Sicilian defense is one of the most popular. Against that, I recommend that you follow a simple approach. Simple approach basically means one that does not require overly huge complications, and yet the major idea of it is that you develop your pieces and you put them towards the center. This is a major guideline. The center is a major guideline so that you could see where you want to have the pieces, how you can get more space than your opponent out there, and then essentially achieve more success. So first thing what we do is we play with the move of pawn up to the d4, of course. Now black is going to likely play with the move c takes to the d, and then we're going to plan ahead with knight takes to the d4. Black could do knight f6, white can do knight c3, pawn to a6. Now let's say we get this position. I mean, this is fairly straightforward. Everybody knows this line. It's very simplistic. So what do we do now? Let's say after we've already done this kind of development. The next thing that matters a lot in such a position, I'd say, is making sure we set our pieces towards the middle. A move like bishop to the e3 makes a lot of sense. Why is that? Well, because we must get across the center as quickly as possible. A little move like that, for example, in case black plays with e6, we can play with the move of bishop to the d3. We've gotten the chance to approach the two most valuable pieces to support it, back it up, and then we can think about getting more stuff from that. It takes time to build this, but it's very important that you do. It's very important that you actually take the time to do so, because when you get that right build up, everything's going to work well. So I'd say that the open Sicilian is one of the best ways to go. If you want to be successful, you might want to consider getting a little more centralized development. For example, like this. This is one of the best lines of development that I've seen. Point behind it is that we get a little across the middle, and we're also ready to not just back up the e4 pawn, but also prep ourselves forward towards the king side. So for instance, in case of queen c7, white can castle long, knight d7, and then go ahead with a move like g4. It would be a really interesting line to reach black out just like that. We could go ahead and very quickly after that play with the move of g5. So that's going to be fairly difficult. plays rook b5, b8, we could do a move like pawn up to the g5. In case black comes right back with his knight on the e8 square, surely we could consider playing the move of h4 plus h5. And the reality is that we are more than happy to simply build up upon the attack on the king's side and just make sure that this keeps getting stronger and stronger as we keep going. It's not so much because of the effect. The impact obviously is clear, but we're looking for a strong way to follow up. We've got the chance to build. You've got a possibility to come forward with h5 plus g4. It is a number of things that will help white out a lot to realize different threats, especially with the move of pawn up to the g6 on the line. Now, this is one of the ways. Now, of course, people are scared. They say, Valeri, I agree with you, but there's just so many lines that people can do against me in that variation. I don't know if I should actually want to do this. I mean, do I want to do this? Truth is, it's a very difficult question whether you like to do that or not. It's almost impossible to answer it. But here is the trick. When you play something like this, like e4, whatever your opponent does, if you follow the simple guideline that you actually want to have as many pieces as you can around the center, you will be perfect. That's really all you ever want. Make sure that you get more pieces closer to the center on more advanced positions. And essentially that's what you must be doing. So knight c3, for example, my favorite line. A lot of people consider it rather boring, but I do think that it is perfect. It's when white plays this, and then after bishop to the b4, white gets to cast a short side, setting himself up for a d3 and possibly an idea of bishop g5 to plan ahead and succeed. It's a wonderful thing. Knight d5 is going to come out next. It's a great reinforcing setup. One of the key principles of any opening is the center. If you want something that has a little less theory and it's a little bit more schematic, you might want to play another favorite system of mine that is both aggressive and quite challenging. It's called the Tory attack. The point behind Tory attack is really simple. It is all about making sure that we get that knight on f3. And for example, after the move of knight to the f3, black plays e6, we could do bishop to the g5. And so we're just going to get that bishop to pin down the black knight. And surely a couple of moves after that, we could see the impact, the effect. It's bishop g5, preparing, setting up everything the way it should be. Bishop e7, knight d2. We've got e4. Now, I mean, again, I don't want to say that this is good or bad. Just don't get me wrong. I want you to understand that in most of these positions, it's really about arranging these pieces quite quickly. You can think about e3 plus bishop to the d3. You could think about quickly the move of knight to the e5. You could think about the extra tension that can be created on the king's side. And as we go along towards that idea, we're going to gradually build upon these possibilities so we can achieve a more successful attack. Remember that it often takes a lot of time to do this. It's not a simple thing, but you need to take that time, you see. And then eventually, if black plays with d5, we could do a move of pawn up to the e3. And in case black gets the castle, we're going to have that opportunity to play with a move of bishop to the d3. Perfect looking move, simply setting out the bishop so it can reach or prepare itself for the king's side. What you want in most opening systems is a simple development. And identifying simple is very much by answering one question. How can I develop my pieces in a way so that they could be both advanced, active, and they can have the potential to attack my opponent? If you can achieve this, you're great. For example, let's say c5, we could do c3. Knight c5, we can do knight e5. Queen c7, white can play f4 with. He could very quickly protect the middle. And now we are ready we're perfectly well set to situate more forces right directly towards the king's side and attack against him there. It's a great way to go for it. Black plays with a move of bishop to the d7. White will play queen f3. It doesn't always go that easily. I mean, this is a bit more of a sugar-coated version. Of course, black could fight that in different ways, but this is a pretty interesting, like setup. So you might want to consider it just like this. So another interesting idea going about that is, what if he plays c5? I mean, people often get troubled by the opponent actually playing an offbeat line. Why? See, so an offbeat line could be confusing, because the trouble of an offbeat line is that it's like it makes you to think like, okay, you probably have to treat it a little differently, but you don't know how. Truth is, it's a provocation. And the provocation comes because he's going to provoke you to treat it differently. Truth is, you do not want to treat it differently. Usually, most of the tactical ideas, most of the possibilities remain the same, very much the same. Very much the same. So what we can do is play d5. And even if it goes differently, still, if you focus on the concept of having better activity and more space towards the center, you are better than good. You have a great opportunity to step up. Knight f6, pawn to the e4. See, that's a wonderful position. Now, what other openings you could follow? I mean, with white, you can also try another line that I've been extremely successful with. I call that the English Botvinnik variation. Point behind it is that white plays c4. And in case black doesn't move like e5, white can try knight c3, knight c6, and g3. No matter where black goes, white develops his bishop, and it starts like an English opening, but it's not exactly the English opening, with the small difference that now white can group his pawn on e4. So he's got the d5 square under his control, under his command. And after that, he is ready to proceed by setting up his own knight on the e2, canceling short. So there are a couple of different ideas you could line up here. One of them could be the ability to play alongside f4, f5 with the plan of h3, g4, and knight g3. This is a great set of moves, by the way, that will help us to attack. But the other version, in case you feel uncomfortable about that, is playing with knight d5. If black chooses to exchange this move, this knight, he's going to have a problem, because we're going to either fork him or open up a very nice line for the attack. And, that's just like, it's a pretty interesting thing. So step by step, white's going to grow by making his position a little stronger with every move. Remember, the key about most of these positions is to make sure you build, and that you make sure you build upon a line of your pieces. It's like we could think about a move like f4 right now. We could think about f takes to the e. We could think about an attack against the f6, and the black king is going to be really bad. E takes f, then knight takes to the f4. Pressure against e6, pressure against f6. The black king is in trouble, and most of our pieces really launch strong attacking activity against the king. So whatever you're thinking or whatever you're considering to do, remember that oftentimes it is really just about the flank. You choose one area of the board, you expand in that area, you gain the space and the pieces, and you pressure him down there. If you do that, things are going to be brilliant, and you can be extremely successful with your tactics and attacks. That's my thought on how you could arrange your plan. Now, so what about black? I mean, it's easy to do this for white, but for black it could be a lot more complicated. Not so much. If you're playing with black against e4, I would recommend that you do, you could choose what opening you like more, but one of my major recommendations is consider the so-called Najdorf. How does Najdorf work? Najdorf is a really easy opening, which basically is all about one thing, and it is the possibility to play, you can play c5, and so if after c5 white plays, let's say, along the road of knight f3, we could do d6, d4, and then after the move of d4, we could do c takes to the d4, knight takes to the d4. So I wanna mention in here that in this type of position, it looks like we're going into something very complicated, very difficult, but this can be further from the truth. The reason why is because as soon as white takes on the d4 with his knight, black can simply continue by pushing versus white's center. Knight f6 is one of the better ways to play along. And for example, after the move of knight to the f6 here, in case white plays knight c3, a6 could be done incredibly well. a6, bishop e3, and then surely the point is we play with e5. So we can drive away the white knight so we can have bishop e7. Once again, the rule about any of these openings is simplicity. The simpler, the better. It's always that. The simpler, the better. So we make it very simple. You make it very, you make it definitely a lot better that way. And of course, like with that type of a move, white is going to have a real problem. So you can play f3, bishop e6. Again, this is a major line, so I don't want to tell you all the theory about this. This is something you can check yourself. Remember, though, that there is a major guideline. No matter the theory, whether you remember it or not, whether your opponent deviates or not, if you focus on the key beats and most importantly the major goal of the opening, which is really all about attacking the queen side, you wouldn't have to know all the theory so you could actually be very successful. We could have rook c8, b5, knight b6, queen c7, rook d8, knight b4. I mean, you name it. All those pieces could realize different type of pressure over white in his position out there. It's a very interesting concept. But to tell you the truth, if that's done in this way, it is going to help us big time. Because it's not just about, oh, hey, that's a wonderful place, let's do it. It's a good place for sure, but the reality is that white is now going to have a wonderful position so that he could further strengthen his pieces, make them get better, and like launch a lot of different tactics against black as it goes. So it is not just a nice position, it's perfect. Remember that in most times, it is a lot more about planning ahead and actually executing the right places for your pieces in a fast amount of the time. If you're fast, things are going to work well. If you're not, if you slow down, things are going to go badly. So we want to be as fast as possible in that position after g4, b5, g5, and knight h5. Anything that white chooses to do on the opposite side of the board really isn't going to matter because we play knight b6 and we are ready to go for tactics. We can think about now playing with b4 or with its knight c4 or anything. It's a great, wonderful move that we can carry on and play with. The tactical idea and the justification we could say about this is that with his great preparation and advancement, it's not going to take too long before black could prove that eventually his whole attack is going to work, is going to be more relevant. Of course, that's not true. It depends on the position and it depends on many other factors, but it is a good start. It is definitely a very good start. So now I'd like to answer one more very important question, and this is, okay, what about if people play d4 against me? Do I have an opening that could be as easy and as simple and as good? Yes. There's been an opening that has made me very successful with black, and it's very easy to play. In the end of the day, you'd always like to be thinking about an opening that is giving you a solid position. And here is how it works. First of all, what you'd like to do is play with d5. And the most important thing about the position after d5 is that if white plays c4, e6, knight c3, f5, you getting into what I call the stonewall. Now, the stonewall is basically about one thing, and it is about making sure we create the formation, the wall of pawns, the way we need it or the way we want it, so that each piece can basically take a pawn its best possible square. I also like very much the square of d6 because it feels like that's the best spot for our bishop. Now, once we have that done, we're going to continue following the very same approach by developing the other bishop, playing with the move of pawn up to the b6. And so, for instance, in case white comes up with bishop to b2, bishop to b7, rook c1, and knight d7, you realize that's not going to take more than just a couple moves to get things ready. What I love mostly is the f5 pawn, which actually develops the opportunity for black to play with knight to the e4. It is the move that, in the end of the day, becomes the most dangerous. We have that knight coming in, we've got the queen stepping up on the e7, and then we're also going to have the opportunity to plan for a move like c5. But what I want to tell you more than anything is that this harmony you've got, the harmony you have got, is going to kill it. And I mean it seriously. You need the coordination of your pieces to continuously strengthen and help you to open up, so that as your position keeps growing, everything else advances as well. We can have the rooks together. We can have the bishop come into the a6. We can have the other bishops supporting also. It is all that good. What about white? Well, that's really the challenge, isn't it? It's not very easy for him to make anything good out of this. And so it's very, very interesting. So these are my major suggestions of the 5 key openings you can try to play. And I hope that they make sense for you so you can follow those up in your next games.